Welcome back to the latest episode of the CGA Tour Podcast. As always, here I'm your host, Glen Alexander. And on tonight's episode of the recording here, this is Wednesday, signing day, December 4th at 10:08 p.m. Central Standard Time. Coming at you here with a special edition of the podcast here in 10 minutes or less, covering the Oklahoma State news and notes here from tonight's kind of news and stories here. There's some good stuff to get into from signing day, but mainly here the news is that the offensive and defensive coordinators, Casey Dunn and Brian Nauter, respectively, have been terminated from their positions at Oklahoma State or fired. And that has been first reported here by, I believe, at Football Scoop and also Brett McMurphy and other sources that I saw all over X, Twitter, and through the webs today, as well as pistolsfiring.com. So, getting into it here, there are a couple of coordinator candidates. There's one that Marshall Scott named, the UNLV OC, who runs kind of a go-go-ish offense, as he called it. And that's definitely a guy who's in the mix here. But there also are a couple other ones here as well that I want to go over. And first up here, this is an article from the O'Colly, but they have a couple of names here to kind of start it out with that are all offensive coordinators here. We're going to work up from basically the last one they named all the way up to the first one that they named here, because I don't think there's a varying degree in how likely they are or how not likely they are. I don't think it makes a difference in which order. So Mac Leftwich, Texas State offense coordinator, is 30, second season at Texas State's OC, and he's becoming name in college football basically overall. He's got some good name recognition, and then he has coached Heisman Trophy candidate Cam Ward, Miami's QB, and also has a couple other ones here that he's kind of coaching up. After that, here it's Jordan Davis, North Texas offensive coordinator. Of course, basically the best years Oklahoma State's had overall have been theoretically from the air raid specialists from Dan Holgerson, Todd Monken, Baltimore Ravens OC. Dan Holgerson also OC recently named here at Nebraska, and then Mike Yursich as well too. And Davis is kind of that guy here. His ranked third in total offense, and 26th in scoring offense, and then UNT ranked sixth in total offense and 20th scoring offense per game as well too. So not just per game, but in scoring offense overall and then per game. And he's 32, so why not go back to the air raid and bring in a little guy who's a little bit younger? Also got Dirk Cutter, Boise State OC. It's not as popular here. The guy is definitely older. He's 65. He'd be older than Gundy. Gundy's 57 last time I checked here. But he's it's his first time basically being the full time OC, and he's the school's interim OC of the second half of the 2022 season as well too. So kind of had half the season in a full, and then I mean, I guess basically coaching Ashton Genty. Why not? Why not give him an opportunity here? The one guy that I think that would be a huge jump, huge reach, and really inspired the whole idea of making this to Zach Robinson. How How far-fetched is it for an NFL offensive coordinator to come back to be the offensive coordinator, the same position, but in college? I think it's very far-fetched unless this Atlanta Falcons season just absolutely goes completely downhill tomorrow. I'm also a Los Angeles Chargers fan and former employee. So I did see the Atlanta Falcons lose and Kirk Cousins throw 4 interceptions against the Chargers this past weekend, one of which was to a rookie. I also saw the Chargers allow 5 sacks to a team that only allows 10 sacks on the year. So kind of putting those two back-to-back sentences together here just to show I'm not sure which team is necessarily that much better than the other one in all skill sets. But at least it looked like Atlanta's quarterback is not doing them any favors here and doing Zach Robinson any favors. So maybe that doesn't turn out so well here in Atlanta. And after the first year, Zach comes back to Stillwater. He's not from Oklahoma originally. He's from Colorado. So it's not like I feel as though he has an innate tie to come back to Oklahoma State, but I have seen some very, very sketchy and very, very iffy reports all over all social media sites, basically saying there's mutual interest in this possibility, which makes me at least want to mention it here. I do not think this happens whatsoever. And I do not think a guy that was the co-OC to many other OCs that are now head coaches throughout the NFL underneath Sean McVay back at the Rams. I mean, Zach Robinson has a ring on his finger from winning the Super Bowl with Sean McVay as the head coach. I can only think Zach Robinson thinks of going up and up from here. Definitely do not see him taking a step back to be the same position but in college that is in the NFL, unless something really bad happens with the season that he's basically currently in. Then you've got Mike Yurcich, who former OSU offense coordinator. Why not bring it all back? He coached Rudolph, he coached Washington, Wallace, Hill. I mean, all those guys were on the team, but he's Mason Rudolph. Is he the best Oklahoma State quarterback overall? If you have to choose a guy who's played 3 seasons or more, or at least in three parts of seasons, Brandon Whedon has a magnificent season in 2010, 2011. Gundy's fourth all time in passing yards, Oklahoma State history. Spencer Sanders has a couple of years there where I'm like, oh my gosh, he's second all time passing yards. But Mason Rudolph is kind of the guy, right? Like if we're Oklahoma State fans. So maybe it's time to bring him back a little bit here. I don't necessarily think it is, just to be honest. I don't think there's a lot in me that goes, yeah, you know what, I see Mike Yurcich coming back to Oklahoma State. It just doesn't seem like it's a likely thing here at all. Now, I I also don't think that there's a way that Oklahoma State goes out and gets just really, really big names here. I I could see it happening, maybe in a blue moon, but it just seems as though we're taking our time with it. We do have to meet with the Board of Regents. There is a whole process to this because it is a state university. And so, there's a special meeting here. Kind of sparks Mike Gundy speculation as well, but that's 9 hours ago. And that's kind of right before all this news broke about the OC and DC being gone. And this is a 3-9 season. It's Gundy's worst season so far, period, record wise. And he's been coaching Casey Winston. He's been coaching for 20 years now, or I mean 19. I'm around in 1 year. If something that happened though where Gundy was owed a buyout, it would be $25.3 million. And so that's just not. I don't think it's doable. I don't think it's worth it. I don't think it makes sense, honestly, as Oklahoma State fans. Seems like all over social media, whenever I put out a comment out there and put out a podcast episode, whatever it may be, there is, hey, we got to fire. Gundy can go too. Gundy's not going to change. He can go as well. There's definitely enough people making those comments publicly and online that I'm thinking, well, you know what? Heck, maybe that'll happen. Who knows? But I do think there's a good chance that Oklahoma State here just stays with Gundy and has a new OC and new DC. So some other OC and DC names coming up here are as follows here from pistolsfiringblog.com. So to get into those here, there's 3 DCs that they go over that are the up and comer category. There's the Rice DC right now, who's Brian Smith. He spent several years coaching the NFL, and I mean, before basically Jim Harbaugh hired him away as Michigan safeties coach, and he was been Rice's DC since 2018. So wasn't on the national championship team there, but there's a bunch of other, kind of possibilities that he comes to Oklahoma State here, coming from, you know, a D1 place like Rice. It's not a D2, and it also is a step up here to come to Oklahoma State and come to a Big 12 school, of course, and be a DC on the rise, but with not too much heat on his name. The guy with a bunch of heat on his name is Indiana's Brian Haynes, who basically just came over from JMU, came over with Kirk Signetti, and I mean, is he really going to leave an 11-1 team for 3-9 team, or is he going to go, hey, this is Indiana team. It's the first time Indiana has double-digit wins. Maybe they don't repeat it again next year, and I want to be at a school that I at least have a chance of improving no matter what, because it's hard to go from 11-1 to 12-0 if you're Indiana, especially here, and you'll be on everyone's radar here. So it just kind of comes down to, can Oklahoma State afford to recruit him away? Or is he also looking for a head coaching job somewhere? I mean, going and being a DC at a school that can turn around like that, maybe head coaching opportunities are out there for you as well, too. Third option here is Brett Britchen at Miami, Ohio. I might be totally butchering his last name here, but right here from the pistolsfiringblog.com article here is, basically he's just giving up 17.3 points a game, ranking 12th nationally and 13th nationally in yards a game. And it's his first DC job, and he's only been in place for a couple of years here since 2022. So can we go get him? Who knows? Maybe, but also maybe he has a little more of that staying power. We know Gundy's not a huge fan of going after big name guys like Jim Knowles, because before Brian Arno, before Jim Knowles, it was, I believe, Derek Mason here fits in that timeline somewhere from Auburn. And those two coaches, Jim Knowles, or coordinator, I should say, Jim Knowles and Derek Mason, both coached Oklahoma State for a total of 3 seasons. Mason's, of course, being the fewest. So it's a little iffy here to see if Gundy really wants to go get other guys like this. But I mean, And Adam Fuller, I mean, he was let go by Florida State and could be looking to join a team that rebounds here. And Florida State season was worse than Oklahoma State season, so he could definitely come and hopefully improve it and bring over maybe some recruits as well too. I don't know what happened with that FSU's team overall, honestly. Like they were amazing just a year ago. They led their conference in scoring defense. So what's going to happen here? The other option to be a also bring another recently fired guy, Ryan Walters, the head coach at Purdue, not the Oklahoma State superintendent for education. And yeah, Ryan Walters, he had success in Illinois before having head coaching job at Purdue. Is he gonna take a break and come over to be a DC and gun up his value again, or is he gonna find other options as well too? And the last thing would be like, all right, is Gundy just gonna just go off the board here and go completely into the open, into the who knows where? I think it's quite possible as well too that there could be another D2 guy that Gundy brings in the door, and all of a sudden we're talking about, okay, we got this guy coming in, and he's who, and where's he from? It's a D2, it's a D3, it's something we don't know about yet. Um, and who knows? Maybe it could work out really well. Glenn Spencer's defenses, that's where Glenn Spencer came from too. He came from Shippensburg, wasn't Gannon. It was also the same kind of similar place. Also, weirdly enough, in Pennsylvania, there are a lot of similarities there. But Glenn Spencer's defense, I think, was pretty darn good. It just wasn't incredibly great. So, I mean, I don't know. It's tough overall to be like immediately just saying, hey, here's who should be the options that a Gundy should, really go after or really go get, etc. So I don't know. I, I struggle with it overall. I also want to touch on some good points about Oklahoma State here, just at least in basketball. Beat Tulsa tonight pretty handily. We're up 20 points for some stretches of the second half. Looked really, really good. Bryce Thompson looked amazing actually playing out there. Had a couple of no-look passes, looking like a little Magic Johnson, at least what the telecast said about him. And if there's a telecast talking positively about Oklahoma State, I'm going to mention it because it is definitely news and it does not happen all the time. So the Oklahoma State possibilities here to I mean, replacing head coach here for Oklahoma State. There is a definite weird deal going on. Sportskita.com, but those are a couple of DC names here. Those are a couple also OC names that I think could be floated around here. Um, the UNLV OC runs the kind of go-go offense that Marshall Scott on the last podcast episode named. I I think it could be interesting if UNLV OC coming to Oklahoma State, which reminds me UNLV. You guys know where Marcus Arroyo is, the former Oklahoma State running backs coach that left Oklahoma State to be the Oregon offense coordinator, that left Oregon offensive coordinator to be the UNLV head coach. Yeah, he's coaching this Saturday for in the Big 12 championship for Arizona State as their offense coordinator. So would he be interested at all in coming to Oklahoma State? I don't necessarily think so, but man, Huh, I would love it. I'm also not opposed to finding guys who are just going to just come in for a year or two and move on. I think now with all of the all of the turnover school year and transfers and everything, there's just no way that Oklahoma State doesn't have a guy who comes in only for a couple years. And I mean, the famous thing to me is that you live long enough to see yourself become the enemy. You can only do so good. Um, and I don't know who that's going to be. Ben Arbuckle is the Washington State OC. He was just hired on by OU, and they just basically just got him in immediately. So Gundy could be leaving again this week. This Friday could be Gundy's out the door too at the Board of Regents meeting, or something else happening. Buyout. I don't think it's likely. Again, keep repeating that, but yeah, there's no one that immediately I'm going, hey, you know what? They're the OC of the future. We got to bring them in no matter what. So I'm curious to see what happens with Oklahoma State here. This is National Signing Day, like December 4th when I'm recording this. So what happens with the other stuff? I mean, what happens with the recruiting? What happens with the transfer portal? What happens with the NIL money? What happens with the spring NIL money coming in next year, supposedly? So what happens with all of this? How does the team go from 0-9 to, I don't know, 5-4, a winning conference record next year? theoretically, that'd be 7 wins. I don't think we beat Oregon in our non-conference tough game. The other 2 non-conference games are pretty easy next year. So, we'll see. Long story long here, I had to let you guys know. I had to let everyone know that I just do not see a big, huge splash coming in for OC. But man, would it not surprise me at all for Weiberg to really pull it out. I mean, Chad Weiberg is an Oklahoma State guy who has made correct decision, it seems like, everywhere he's been before Oklahoma State and currently at Oklahoma State. The only maybe slight issue he had was giving Gundy the lifetime-ish contract, but if my timeline serves me correctly, that's right when he started the job and during COVID. So I'm okay with that. And then hiring on JC Hoyt, women's basketball coach, David Taylor working with a donor that's not an Oklahoma State alum, and the donor who's the CEO of Paycom, who was a UCO grad, whose football team is named after UCO. And hey, Weiberg's able to work with him to get him Oklahoma State's new wrestling coach after the guy went to OU first last year, apparently, to try to do the same thing. And then, of course, Steve Lutz getting wins on Wednesday nights in non-conference play. Hey, gotta love it. It's against Tulsa. I'm not putting too much stock into it, but you know what? We've beat Miami University in basketball this year so far in non-conference. So it's time to get out there, watch some more basketball, really love it up here with the Chad Weiberg hirings and signings, all that type of stuff here, and embrace the hopefulness of Oklahoma State football and see how it goes this season. So thank you so much for listening, tuning in, watching, and we'll catch you guys again soon. Peace.